What is up, everyone? So I'm in the middle of working on this machine, and I've been doing this series called, flipping or making money on certain items. And this is a generator, hopefully you know. But I actually got a question about my thoughts on generators. So let's sit down, have a conversation on how I make money flipping generators, and you'll see my process. Disclaimer, this is my process. Maybe some people who are more electrically savvy have a different one. I don't know, but this is mine. So if you are not necessarily an electrician and you still kind of want to make a little bit of money flipping generators, go right ahead, sit down, let's have a conversation and let's talk. First things first is you need to know if the motor's good. That one can be a little difficult. This motor actually had a bad recoil. So, first thing I would check to see if it has compression. Now, if it has a bad recoil like this one, it's going to require you to go ahead and pull it through its motions, make sure you have a good compression. If you don't, that could be a little concerning because now your motor's bad. Now, here's the thing about generator motors. They're not like other motors. They have a tapered shaft. What that is at the end of the machine, unlike a normal one, it just has like a, 3/8, 7/4, 1 inch, whatever, straight shaft. This is tapered, so it kind of goes into like a small little cone. And the generator part actually is a press fit. And that's just how they do it. So the motor is not like all the other ones. You can't buy like a horizontal shaft pressure washer motor and put it on a generator. It doesn't work like that. So generator motors are kind of particular. So pull on and make sure it has compression. If it doesn't, ask the story, like what's going on. Were you using it? Was it just not used for a long time? What's going on? If you hear the story of I was using it, I put it away, it was working fine, probably okay. It's probably a gas issue. In addition to that, maybe the valves are. But if there's no compression, I'm not paying a lot for it. I don't care what amazing story I hear. If I get like a good 5,000, 7,500 watt, and I pull on it, there's little to no compression. I'm hearing a story like, oh yeah, it was working fine, I put it in my garage and I don't know what happened. People lie. I would basically consider that scrap. At that point, I'm like, okay, personally, I don't pay more than $60, $80 for that. That's just me, depending on the size. This one, definitely no. But if it's a big one, yes. This one, I'm pretty sure it's $40, no more, and that's it. And that's only because I could take parts off of it for other machines, like recoils and carburetors and, stuff like that. But if there's no compression, that's a thing. If there is compression, that's okay. Now, what you should do at any given time, if there is compression, before you buy it, because I'm assuming it's not running, take some starting fluid, carb spray, whatever you want, and a drill, maybe a little light, something that has a very low load, and plug it in. Now, normally you shouldn't do that, but we're testing it, so it's okay. Plug it into whatever receptacle you want. Put a little sprayer in there, pull it over. If it burps and fires up and your drill or your light turns on, you're golden. Almost, like 99% of the time. 95% of the time. Go ahead, buy it. It's probably fine. Probably a fuel issue. No worries. Almost no worries. If you don't, that's the hard part. If it's an inverter generator, look and see if there is a panel up there, and if there's usually like an overload light or something or whatnot, see if that's on. If it's a generator like this, make sure the breakers aren't popped. Maybe they just popped the breaker, you don't know. If the breakers are good, you assume, and there still is no power, there's a couple different types. There's one with the AVR, and there's ones that do not have an AVR. The ones that do not have an AVR usually have a capacitor in it, Those are a lot easier, and if you're able to, take off the back cover and see if you see AVR, a capacitor, maybe your brushes are bad. You know, there's a lot of different things. However, that's where we get into a lot ifs and buts. If you're not seeing power, it better be super cheap. I mean really cheap, but basically scrap metal price. Because the likelihood of the windings being bad or burned is pretty high. And unless you know the person, I wouldn't take their word for it, saying, oh yeah, I was making power before I turned it off. I don't know why it's not now. Now, the reason why I say take a light or a drill, I prefer a drill, is this. Imagine it's not making power, but you're able to maybe have the little help, spray a little carb spray in there. You can take the chuck of the drill and spin it backwards. And basically, every electric motor is a generator, except it just, instead of using electricity, it creates it if you spin it. You can backfeed into the generator, and sometimes it's called flashing, or I guess it's not sometimes, it is called flashing. And a little bit of electricity is all it needs to kind of get a jump start, and it needs to start making normal power. And then once it starts doing that, it should be okay. There are occasions where if a generator is consistently needing to get jumped, there's a problem. So, you kind of run that risk. But in my opinion, if you're able to flash it and it runs fine, you turn it off and it turns on again and it runs fine, you're probably okay, relatively okay. Go right ahead and buy it. If it's not making power though, I highly suggest just cheap. Maybe you have a good inclination, maybe you hear a story of how the person took it to a shop and they said the AVR is bad. I don't know what an AVR is, so I'm selling it online, you know, stuff like that. Okay, those are not too horribly priced, but even then that's a risk. Because maybe that shop is wrong. Maybe that's, I mean, how many times have you heard of someone just kind of like, I'm just going to say it's an AVR. I know they're not going to want to pay for it, so I'm just going to say that. Quick, easy, in-out job. Not exactly the best of ideas. So, in my opinion, if it's not making power, go right ahead and just say scrap price. What you can do also, if you really, really want to, so you can check the power head. If it has a 240 outlet with the 4-prong, the prong with the little line on it is ground, the one directly across from it's neutral, and the one on either side is leg 1 and leg 2. You can put it in resistance mode and go into the neutral and see if you put like one of your prongs in neutral, the other one to leg 1, and then the other one to leg 2, see what the resistance is. If it's not incredibly high or incredibly dissimilar, so if one says it's 4 or 5 and the other one says it's like 27, that's bad. If it's both relatively the same, that's probably okay. But we're getting to that nitty-gritty part of it where you're going to have to go into more electronics, and we're going to stay away from that. That's as far as we're going to go. If it reads okay, you probably, like I said, probably just do need a good AVR. Now, you do want to check to see if anything's connected to ground. So you go into the ground slot, and you go to leg 1 or leg 2, and if anything is making connection, that's bad. Don't do anything. Just stop right there. Scrap metal price. Take it or leave it. No? Okay, I'm out of your garage. Because that is basically dead short, and dead shorts are potentially even dangerous. You could start a fire. Don't do that. Next. So we know it potentially makes power. We know the engine's okay, or at least potentially okay. One of something like the carburetor, I don't really care too much. They're usually fairly cheap, or they can be cleaned, whatever. Something that is a killer on these machines is the fuel tank. If it's a metal tank like this, look inside of it. If it's rusted, That could be a chore if it's not leaking. So if it has a plastic tank, look and make sure it's not cracked anywhere. Usually the plastic tanks hold up pretty well though. But if it's a metal tank, if it has a lot of rust in there, to be honest, it's kind of scrap metal price in my opinion. If for any reason you can't clean that, do you have any idea how expensive these tanks are? They're oddly expensive. Maybe some of them might be a little cheaper now. Maybe some of them are more expensive than I remember. You know, either way, as a general assumption, they're going to be expensive. A tank can kill projects for me. So don't, if it's a really nasty tank, unless it's something old and weird and you really want to work on it, or maybe you have a machine that's identical and the tank is good on the other one, then obviously that's fine. But if it's just something you want to, you know, pick up and flip and there's a bunch of rust in there, And there's a difference between rust and varnish. Maybe it was put away so long ago and there's a lot of old fuel in there and varnished over. Take a screwdriver, kind of scrape it off the bottom, see if there's any rust. If it's really hard to scrape and you don't see clean metal, that's rust. Or varnish that's so thick that's going to be a super hard time to take it off, and you're going to be wasting a lot of time going through whatever cleaner you want to use. So don't do that. That is basically the three main things you want to check. Now let's say you are just buying something that's not brand new, but technically working, and you just want to sell it. You can do that. I don't really recommend it, but if you're getting a good price, go right ahead. Majority of them are going to be broken. So when you're looking at that, just because the three main things we discussed right now are okay, doesn't mean that's a good idea. Let's go over the fourth and final thing you need to look at. The accessories, let's call it that. Maybe yours has electric start. That's fine. That's perfect. But maybe your battery's dead. Battery costs money. Maybe your pull cord's broken. That costs money. That's a lot cheaper though. If you see a lot of broken and or missing stuff, start doing if you even looked at it, I mean ideally you've seen pictures already, and start going online as let's say for instance, I can't tell you, for whatever stupid reason, people always take off the air filter cover and then just leave it around somewhere, and it always gets lost for everything. It doesn't matter what it is. So imagine you need an air filter cover, a new gas lid, maybe the battery's missing, maybe a couple screws here and there are missing, maybe you need to do a recoil. You know, all that stuff starts to add up. Do a little research beforehand, and if all the missing pieces that you need to buy equate out to a half of what you can sell it for, don't bother. And that includes the price of the generator, by the way. So let's say you, like for instance, you see this one on the internet for $60. Looks pretty complete. And then all of a sudden you notice that it needs a new recoil. Okay, recoil's like $20, $25. And then you go to the person's house, you spin it, everything seems fine. You're kind of taking a gamble on the power head though, so that's a little rough. But the story is, they put it away. It seemed fine. They tried starting it during a power outage, and all of a sudden the recoil broke. They tried to fix it, and they're like, yeah, screw this. I'm going to go buy a new one. More likely than not, the power head's probably fine. So that's a good story. $20-25. That's not a horrible thing. I mean, I personally can sell this for $250 easy. No problem. That's not going to be an issue. Now, let's say the story turns into the same story, but now we're missing the recoil or a broken recoil. They took the cover off to spray a little starting fluid down there. It didn't work. And then they decide to put it away. And then one day, their other machine, for whatever reason, needed a new gas cap, so they stole the gas cap. Gas cap 20, air filter cover 30, this one 25-ish. I mean, right now we're looking at like, 25, 55. Let's say that's, like I said, 30, $85 plus the $60. It's $145. Right now we are getting into $55 to $105 worth of profit. Plus the gas, maybe you drove forever to get there. I mean, ideally you shouldn't, because anything over half an hour, in my opinion, is too much unless it's a smoke. Anyway, sorry it's shut off. Anyway, so fuel, all that stuff, you need to take a good account for that. So that's how I make money on this type of thing. If it has general motor issues, that's perfect. If it has no power issues, that's not so perfect, unless you have a very good story and you can kind of prove it. A little hard to do that. Multimeter is definitely a good thing to take. Carb spray, definitely a good thing to take. General tools, screwdriver, socket set, stuff like that, good idea to take. Like I said, maybe you take the recoil off, check the compression, stuff like that. And if you really just want to be safe, scrap metal price the entire time. If you can get any generator for scrap metal price, go right ahead. If you're getting something that may or may not be scrap metal price, you're taking a risk. Unless you have a very good story, or you can test it and it makes power and the motor runs, just that's a fuel issue, then go right ahead. Anything else, scrap metal price. That's my very highly recommended suggestion. And unless you see it making power, scrap metal price. Even then, you can still have an issue, but if you need to rebuild a motor, it's a lot of pain, a lot of hassle, but at the very end of the day, at least your time, you know, what's a set of rings, unless it's, you know, a bad block, you know, stuff like that. I have a video on when I rebuilt a Tecumseh, because I got it for super cheap. I think it was even free. It had a bad motor, but made power. Guess what? I put new rings, ran perfectly. Was it a 2-3 hour job? Yeah, but I was also recording. Maybe you do it in there 2-3 hours because you're not 100% sure what you're doing. You know, but I also sold it for like $350. So, you know, you need to weigh your time, weigh your ideas. And the only way to really know that one is if you can test it. But if you can test the output, then guess what? It's probably not going to be broken and you're not going to get a good deal. So just know generators are really one of those things you're going to be taking a risk on. But with no risk, you know, you're always going to have one. But a risk sometimes can pay off. Like for instance, that one. I mean, I spent, like I said, 2-3 hours, made a video. Maybe $15 worth of parts for the rings, another $20 for the gasket set, $35, got it for free, I made $300. Not a horrible thing. So generators can be a pretty good money source as long as you follow those general rules. If you just get one with a fuel issue, I mean, more likely than not, you're going to be okay. Generators suffer from sitting a lot more than anything else. And to say that any generator that suffers from sitting also suffers from overuse in the worn motor, that's a pretty rare thing, so you should be okay. I just bring that up because I want you to know that it can occur. But other than that, this is how I make money on generators. That's why you don't see a lot of them, because a lot of times there is a problem with the power generating portion of it. And if you have to replace the power head, that's expensive. So that's why I kind of steer clear from that, unless it's an easy fix and I test it beforehand and it seems to be fine. Maybe I just need a new AVR capacitor or whatever. Or if you can literally see like a broken brushes, that's happened before. Sometimes there's like a little wire that comes off the stator that's kind of broken. I've soldered it back together. Probably not the best thing, but it's a tiny little generators at that point, so it should be fine. You know, you really just have to weigh what's going on. But if you can find a few of these diamond roughs who've just been sitting for a while, to be honest, 80% of them out there. 80%, at least where I live. Maybe yours is different, I don't know. But I'm going to leave you at that. Follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If you like what you see, put a thumbs up, that helps me out a lot. If you have any questions, maybe a generator question of whether or not you should buy it, throw it in a comment and I'll give you my opinion. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. You have a good rest of your night.